The Future Homeowner Show.
Hello and welcome to the Future Homeowner Show. I'm your host, Eric Helon, and we have a great episode today for you. We're going to be diving into a great topic that was brought up this week, going over a couple of headlines as well that you need to know about or should know about. One of them's kind of strange, a little interesting, but we'll be covering that. And then we're going to take a question that we received this week and answer that for you on the show here. If you're watching live and you do have questions that you want to ask, that you want us to address, feel free to drop them in the comments on whatever platform you're on, and we'll be able to see them, and then we can answer them there. But outside of that, we have some great new intro music for our segment, so I'm happy about that. And we're going to jump right into the pulse of the market so we can talk about some of these latest headlines. Let's take a look.
Pulse of the market, what's moving now? Pulse of the market, we'll show you how. Rates in the money, inventory low, hot homes get picked before they even show. Neighborhood numbers count every trend. We wreck the signs and explain the end.
All right, so that's our Pulse of the Market intro music. So I want to dive into two headlines that I found fascinating that came out this week. One was pretty alarming. The other was kind of crazy, comical, I guess. I mean, we'll kind of talk about it and I'll get your feedback on it, but let's go ahead and jump into it right now. So this first headline that came across was actually talking about this Wells Fargo settlement. So Wells Fargo is settling their mortgage discrimination suit with over $100 million to fund and help low-income home buyers. So if you're not familiar, Wells Fargo was actually sued about 4 years ago, and they had multiple suits coming out. And so what they did was they just kind of turned it into a class action suit. Because there are several people who were reporting this. But what happened was they were denying African Americans at an alarming rate in comparison to any other race. And they were kind of caught in doing this, even though, when they compared files, they found that these borrowers were pretty much the same. It was just in neighborhoods that they didn't want to fund in. And these were mostly refinances. But, large banks have been caught doing this over the years. And I bring these up when I see them because oftentimes people think, oh, well, that's history. That was in the past where that a lot of discrimination took place, and it's going on right now. So we're still seeing it in today's market where these these lenders are still discriminating. And I'm not going to mention all of them, but there are definitely a number of them out there. So the latest one is this Wells Fargo settlement. And so what does it mean for first-time home buyers? Well, what they're going to be looking at is providing mortgage assistance, so down payment assistance programs, closing cost programs to help first-time home buyers in about 50 cities. And I'll kind of dive into a few of those because one of them is definitely San Diego. But they approved a final settlement on May 15th. And again, it's $100 million that they're going to provide. And it's a 3-year program. So there's 3 years of mortgage assistance programs for the communities. And they're primarily for low to moderate income households. So if you're, making well over the average income in your city or county, you're probably not going to benefit from this program. This is going to be for low to moderate income earners. But really what they're saying is, hey, we're going to give this money, but we're not going to admit to any fault, which is common. Most of the times when they reach a settlement, they don't want to admit to any fault. There was definitely some oversights that were needed, that some things fell apart where they should have been overriding their lending practices and catching this stuff, but they didn't. And so, whether they admit it or not, this was taking place in their offices and something that they should have caught. And so this is going to impact, like I said, about 50 different cities. They're finding that what they're going to do first and foremost is provide funds for down payment assistance. Okay, so what cities are actually going to benefit from the funds? I'm not obviously going to name them all, but there are some here in California. So there's Oakland, Sacramento, San Francisco, San Jose, San Diego's on the list. So these metropolitan areas are going to be receiving funds. Riverside is on there as well, for a down payment assistance program. So this might be an opportunity to take advantage of a program that is now being introduced that you can use to cover your down payment assistance. There are some cities that will not be getting the down payment assistance programs, but they will have closing costs programs. And so there was a Thousand Oaks in California, but the rest were outside of California. It was like Cape Coral, Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, cities like that. So talk to your real estate agent, talk to your lender about this settlement. Bring it up to them. Make sure they know about it, number one, and talk to them about maybe how you can take advantage of this type of program. Your lender may not be with Wells Fargo, so they may not have access to it. But if you talk to your real estate agent and they know a Wells Fargo loan officer who can offer this program to you, it might help you get your foot in the door. So take advantage of this program, because obviously it is a settlement. It is something that is going to probably run out pretty quick once people find out about it and start utilizing it. $100 million, believe it or not, doesn't go very far once people start to know about it and take advantage of it. When you think about down payment, down payment in California could be, $40,000, $50,000 up to, $120,000, $150,000. So, you got to look at how much of this money is going to be used primarily in like cities in California or cities in New York or Florida, like some of the more expensive areas, and how fast that money might run out. So talk to your agent, see if there's a Wells Fargo loan officer that you can talk to who may have access to this program so you can utilize it. That was more of a serious headline. Now let's get to a crazy yet kind of comical headline. So I don't know if you've heard about this, but in Michigan, there was a landlord who got caught having sex inside a rental home while his tenants were actually at the hospital. And he got caught because there were cameras in the home. And so this news article, this happened in Detroit, by the way. There's a news article that came out on Fox 2, and it has the video. Of course, I'm not going to show it. I don't want any issues with that. But they have the video of the landlord actually having sex on his tenant's couch, and then getting up and in their kitchen, in the refrigerator, making a sandwich, like just living in their home. And so, the big question came about, well, if the landlord gave the tenant 24-hour notice that they were going to be in the home, right? They did what they're supposed to do. Now they're in the home. What are the legal standards of what they can do inside that home once they provided notice? And this is, people they're trying to figure out if this is legal, illegal, like where they can go with this, because it seems to be a more civil issue. And so they're trying to say, well, hey, you gave him access to the home. There's no legal standing for what he was doing in the home. But you can imagine if you were these tenants, how you would feel coming home or seeing that on the camera. The tenant actually said they were in the hospital and they were getting these alerts that, there's something going on in the house, and they pulled up the video and this is what they see. So it was crazy. This is something that you have to be mindful of. If you're in a lease, if you have a rental agreement, you might need to spell out some more specifics about what the landlord can do in your home. Because this is definitely not something that you want. You're going to feel violated if something like this were to happen. So again, they did confront the landlord. The landlord blew it off. They're seeking legal guidance. And, from a legal standpoint right now, they're not sure if it's an actual crime or not. And so trying to kind of, this is kind of a first to happen where, there's a lot more cameras now. And so people have to be aware. I always tell my clients, even when we were going to look at homes, people have Ring cameras on the outside of the home, so you don't want to be talking about, or what you're going to potentially offer as far as offer price, or talking really bad about the home or things of that nature, because trust me, the seller is listening. So be mindful of that. There are cameras around. Take this, as advice. So if you are in a current rental, figure out what your landlord can and cannot do, and keep an eye on those cameras. So those are the two articles that I wanted to cover from this week. Again, like I said, there was definitely one serious opportunity that's available to first-time home buyers. And the other one was just a crazy story that you need to be aware of. So again, if you have a lease agreement, start to spell out some of those specifics in that lease as to what your landlord can and cannot do. So that's it for our Pulse of the Market segment. Let's jump into the deep dive, which I'm really excited to jump into.
Deep dive, yeah, go a little deeper. Deep dive, get wilder. Deep dive, deep dive, deep dive, deep dive, deep dive, deep dive, deep dive.
All right, so we're going to talk about a topic that came up this week from one of our clients. They had attended one of our webinars and they brought up a question. They said, should I just build my first home? Is that, like, what does that process look like? Is it, less of a headache, or, what are the costs? So I wanted to kind of go through this because oftentimes people are, they have a misunderstanding of everything that's required to go down a certain path. And I'm not just saying that for new, building your own home. It could be like buying a brand new home versus buying, a resale home as well. But today we're going to really dive into building your own home, building your first home. And so, I get it. I understand why somebody wants to do it. Number one, everything's brand new. You come into a home, it's all the things that you picked out. Number two, the layout works for you. So you have an idea of, how you want your home laid out specifically, what works for you. If you want multiple primary bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms, or you want every room in the home to have an ensuite bathroom, like that makes sense. Like, you want to have it your way. I get it. You might want open floor plans or, upgraded flooring, whatever the case may be. Just some things that are a little bit deeper than buying new construction. When you buy new construction, they may have a certain number of model homes and a certain number of options when it comes to your finishes, your flooring, and things of that nature. And so you're still kind of limited even when you're building with a developer as opposed to building on your own. But there are definitely some pros and cons. There are some costs to consider, and that's what we're going to jump into today. And I'm going to start with the pros because, like I said, there's some good reason to do this. You are coming into a brand new home. You have, a new roof. Your big ticket items are not going to surprise you when they go out. Typically, everything you buy and install is going to be under warranty. So you have some protections there. Like I mentioned, the layout, even your landscaping, you can decide on what you want that to look like. So obviously that has some pros there as well. Another pro is that everything will be energy efficient, so you can cut some costs on your utilities. Now, in California, when you build new, there are requirements for you to add solar to the home. So whenever you buy new, build new, it has to have solar installed. So keep that in mind. But that does, provide some energy efficiency. So you can save some costs with lower utility bills. You can change out your insulation and, go with a thicker insulation. There's just a lot of options that you have when you're building new and you're looking to save some costs on energy. Another pro is that there's less competition. I mean, you're the only one, right? You're the one buying and building the home. So who are you competing against? So you're not really competing and, seeing that asking price go up because now multiple people are competing for the same home. So definitely a pro there. But let's talk about some of these cons. Now, some of the things that you need to understand about building your own home is, number one, you have to find the land. Land is not cheap, especially here in California. So when you think about buying, building your home, you're not only buying just the house, you got to buy the land to start with. And so most people think like, especially if you go with a condo or something, you don't really own that land, because it's a condo. So you can have some savings there. But when you're building new construction, you have to start with the land. Now, unless you have deep pockets, land is not cheap. Land, even when you're financing land, they typically want 30, 40, 50% of the financed amount, up front as your down payment. So you can't think that you're going to find a $30,000 piece of land and get that finance. That's not going to happen. Typically, lenders don't even finance that low. And so you'll need to, buy that outright. If you're looking at a more expensive piece of land, then there are financing options, but again, you're going to have to come with a significant amount down. So keep that in mind. Some of these real costs, like I mentioned, the land is expensive here in San Diego. I mean, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars for land. You also need to think about the plans. So you're going to need to hire an architect to do the architectural plans. You're going to need to talk to a structural engineer to make sure that, the house is sound and not going to fall apart. Those costs can be roughly 10 to 40, $50,000. And they don't finance that. So, when you talk to an architect, they're going to want their money. The engineer is going to want their money. So again, you're going to need a significant amount of money up front in order to kind of go through this process. So keep that in mind. You also have to deal with the city, the county, utilities when you're thinking about permits and site preparation. So you have this piece of land. What is it that you need to do to the land in order to get it ready? If there's not already electricity, running water, already running to that land, gas, you're going to have to work with those agencies to put that in, and they're going to have permit fees, and they're going to have a process of what you need to do in order to go through that. Obviously, I would hope that you're going to work with a licensed contractor, a licensed general contractor to help you through this process, because as a first-time home buyer, if you're not already a contractor or working with the contractor, you're going to set yourself up for failure. So you definitely want to be thinking about that. You might have to grade the property. It might need soil treatment, water treatment. They might have to do testing. So you really want to know what to expect with that. The cost of doing just that site preparation could be $20,000 to $40,000 as well. Permits depend on, the city that you're in, but you could pay, $10,000, $20,000 for just in permits as well. Could add up on you. So keep that in mind. Now, the actual construction costs, now this is where you're going to talk to your general contractor, because they're going to probably quote that architectural plan that you have on a price per square foot and give you that estimate as to what it's going to cost. Because, if you're building, say, a 2,000 square foot home, it's going to cost $500, $300 to $500 per square foot. If it's 300, then you're looking at about $600,000 to build. Now that's $600,000 plus the land, plus all your plans and your approvals and permits. So, keep that in mind. You could have a very beautiful, huge home, and probably at the end of the day, everything would be less than buying a resale home, but you just need to have some money up front to get through that process and make it to the actual construction. Like I mentioned, you have to worry about the utility cost, utility connections, and then also landscaping. Don't forget about landscaping. Landscaping can add up, especially when you want to go with like water resistant, turf, things of that nature. I know we had bought a new construction home, needed to do our backyard. We spent about $15,000 to $20,000 to do our backyard, and that's because you do pavers, you do turf, you do a full design. So it just depends on what you want to do with it, but keep that in mind. I mean, it's not just the home, it's the land, it's the backyard, the front yard, things of that nature as well. So as far as the timeline goes, you could be looking at, number one, the first phase is going to be finding land that you actually want to buy and build on. So that might take you, anywhere between a month to 6 months, who knows. Then you can look at the design and planning phase. That's the second phase. That's going to take about 2 to 6 months to go through that phase. Then you're looking at the city, county permits. So that actually takes a little bit of time. Some people get so frustrated with building that they, like this was the hardest part, is like getting the permits and getting approvals. That can take, up to a year or longer. So keep that in mind as well. And then you get into the actual construction, which can be, about 9 months to maybe 18 months, depending on the size of the home, depending on weather, things of that nature as well. So it's going to be a long time. Okay. I don't want you to think that this is going to be a fast process. So if you're willing to go down this route, it could take you, anywhere between a year and a half to 3 years to get it done. So keep that in mind if time is of the essence for you. So again, you get into some of these risks when it comes to building. Number one, obviously construction loans are harder to get. So even when you're thinking about, okay, I have to buy the land, but then I have to get a loan to build this thing, construction home loans are a lot harder than maybe an FHA first-time home buyer loan. So keep that in mind. They're going to typically require larger down payments. You got to have stronger credit, and you got to have some money in the banks, what we call in the industry reserves. So you definitely want to have those three. Costs can increase in the middle of the project. So that's a big risk. We have overages. We have, things that happen. And so, your contractor may come back to you and say, oh, this happened. We're going to need a little more money for this. Your fixtures could add up. So all of a sudden you could be paying $800,000 for a $600,000 house that you had planned to build. So happens all the time. It's a big risk. So keep that in mind. And then the actual delays can actually cost you. As I mentioned, when you're building, you're worried about weather. They're building outside. And so if there are delays, you have what are called holding fees. So, as you're building, you're possibly paying the interest on the mortgage in the meantime. So you could be still paying that. You could also, interest rates could actually rise as you're going through this process. And then you could be still paying rent somewhere else while it's still being built. So obviously you're paying rent longer than you expected as well. So those things could arise that could cost you. Now, buying an existing home is usually better for first-time home buyers. I'm not here to tell you what to do. Just want to give you the information so you have a true understanding. Number one, when you're buying resale, it's faster. The home is ready. You put your offer in. Typically here in California, our escrow process is about 30 days. 30 days, you're getting the keys to that house. So, you could be in your home within, 30 to 60 days and you got the keys in hand. So obviously it's going to be faster. Costs are definitely more predictable. So when you're thinking about the risk of overages in building, these costs are expected when you're buying resale. We know, hey, you're going to need an earnest money deposit. You're going to need money for your inspections. You're going to need your closing costs and your down payment. And then, any time that you close, then obviously you're going to have additional fees. That's like, furnishings and decor and things of that nature. But you have an idea of what those costs are going to be. They're not going to fluctuate by hundreds of thousands of dollars like it could when you're building a brand new home. So they're more predictable. You definitely have lower upfront costs because you're not paying out of pocket for land. You're not paying the larger down payments for the construction loan. You're not paying for architectural and engineering plans, stuff like that out of pocket. So that definitely helps as well. And then also, you're going to start building equity a lot faster. So because you're getting into that home right away, you're letting it appreciate over time. So you're already starting to pay your mortgage, you're living there, and value is going up. When it comes to construction, you may think, oh, I'm buying it for less than what the homes around this house would cost. But if it takes you that long to finish, who knows what the home prices are going to be in 3 years in that area. Also, who knows if interest rates are going to go up and now your payments are going to be higher. Again, you want to keep all these things into consideration because your costs can actually go up. When you think you're buying a home for less than comparable properties, you could actually be paying more at the end of the day. So you're not getting any equity built into that purchase. And then, if you're buying, let's say, your first home is a resale home, you can always upgrade later, right? So you can move out of that house within the next year, 2 years, 3 years. You can upgrade. So if it's not the right fit, you can make that move. When you're building your home, if you're done and you've gone through that entire process, it's very unlikely that you're going to move somewhere because you've made this home your own. You're invested heavily into it financially and emotionally, mentally. So you're going to really be invested in that home. And chances are you're not going to be looking to upgrade anytime soon. And so if you don't like what you've built, you're kind of stuck with it. I mean, you'd have to sell it and kind of start all over. So that is something to consider. You're not really building that wealth as fast because you're not upgrading and you're not moving on when you could be moving into a resale. Maybe it's a condo, it's your first home, values go up, you take that and buy something else. Now you keep that condo as a rental property, you're earning some money on that property, you're in another home because you upgraded, and you can repeat that system many times over if you choose to. So there's a lot of opportunities when buying resale. Again, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but you just have to realize that when you're buying brand new, like you're building your own home and it's your first home, there are definitely some risks. There's some costs that you need to know up front. And you have to understand the timelines because it can take you years to complete that process. So it's all about your motivation, how motivated you are, what your financial situation is. But just keep in mind that it will cost you more upfront. You will have to invest more time upfront. And you have to be willing to give up some potential appreciation that could happen in the meantime. So I hope that was beneficial to you if you've ever considered buying versus building. Obviously, especially when it's your first home, I would recommend that you kind of take the easier route because you don't know what to expect. There are enough issues that arise in just buying a home in general. The last thing you want to do is create more issues for yourself. So, but if your heart is dead set on building your own home, then by all means, go for it. Make it happen. Just build a home that you truly want so that you don't find yourself being stuck with something that you don't. So that's it for our deep dive segment for today. We're going to jump into our Q&A segment, and we have one question that I want to address. So let's go ahead and dive into it.
No more guessing, no more doubt. Real steps, real answers, that's what we're about. Real questions, real answers. Ask it plain. Real questions, real questions.
All right, so let's jump into one question that we received this week. I don't see any live questions, so we'll address this one and then we'll wrap up. The question came in and said, I do want to buy a home, but I'm feeling stuck. I feel like I cannot afford to make a move and go from renting to owning. What steps should I be taking so I can overcome this fear? And this is a good question. So, there are a lot of folks who have fear. We talked about it in the last episode where people kind of disqualify themselves because they don't know what to expect or they think that it's not possible for them. And so this question, kind of hits right at that mindset. And really at the heart of an issue that is very common. So number one, I want to thank you for your bravery in asking the question. And number two, I want to encourage you, at the end of the day, there are some practical things that we can do that we can show you. We can talk about the home buying process, but there are some mental roadblocks that may be keeping people from purchasing their first home. It's the fear, it's the doubt, it's the horror stories that they hear from other people. These have a major impact to your ability to buy your first home. And so what I would say from a practical standpoint first is look at your income. When you're thinking about renting versus owning and trying to make that leap, how would a new mortgage impact your budget? So you need to know how much money's coming in, how much money's going out, and you need to talk to an actual loan officer so they can tell you what a potential home would cost, all of the costs, the HOA and everything else that might be there. So that way you can look at that and say, is that feasible? So start there. Start with the money because you want to make sure that you can afford to buy this home. The last thing you want to do is buy the house and be forced to sell it because you can't afford it, 6 months down the road. So definitely start there. If you're looking at your budget and you're finding that there's not enough money there, figure out ways that you can either increase your money or eliminate your debts. So I call this offense versus defense. Start with offense, right? What can I do to either get a raise or, do I have a second job and that income is kind of coming in on a consistent basis? Look at those things on how you can increase your income. That's always a good exercise to go through anyway, right? So you want to make sure you're being valued at work, and then you want to also look at other opportunities to increase your income if you're not making the money that you want to be making currently. But again, if after you've kind of exhausted the offense, then you need to look at your defense and say, well, what money is going out? What money is leaving me that's going towards an expense that I'm either no longer using, I don't want, I don't desire, or I don't need, right? So I know nowadays it's becoming harder and harder to give up these expenses that we're used to having. Whether I know everybody talks about Starbucks and they get a bad rap. But there's also a lot of subscriptions that people don't know about. I know like Rocket Money, they're talking to a lot of people because there are a lot of subscriptions that are coming out every single month that you may not even realize. And so you need to address those. So really take a deep dive under the microscope, look at your budget, see what you're paying for, and ask yourself the tough questions and start to eliminate those things. Then you can start to take that difference, that money, that cash flow, and start to apply it to debt. So any debt that you have, you want to start paying that down. That'll increase your debt to income ratio so you can buy a home and you can buy even maybe a bigger home, something like that. So just because the loan officer tells you you're only qualified for this amount, that amount can go up if you increase your income and lower your debt. So keep that in mind. Another thing you want to do is look at all the different programs that are out there. So there are over 2,000 down payment assistance programs you may qualify for. Look at those, see if those can help you. If your issue is, hey, I don't have the money up front to put down or pay closing costs, look at these programs, talk to your agent about what's going on in the market, if sellers are paying for closing costs, if the sellers are buying down interest rates, like look at those opportunities as a way for you to get your foot in the door as well. So that's what I have on a more practical level. Now, on a mental and, heartfelt level, I would just encourage you to really take a beat, like just realize where you're at. If you're currently paying rent, be thankful for where you are first and foremost. Roof over the head, you're good, but have a plan moving forward. So what I mean by that is, maybe you can't buy a home. We're in 2026. Maybe you can't buy a home in 2026, but maybe you can in 2028 with the right plan. So take a beat, take a step back and say, maybe I can't buy now, but it's not a no. It's just a later, right? I can buy a couple years from now. And if so, what do I need to do in order to get there? I personally believe that everybody can buy a home. Anybody who is working for a living should be able to purchase a home. Now, what we get into is how are you spending your money? We look at where do you want to buy, the type of home you want to buy. You're trying to buy your dream home instead of your first home. Those are the things that we have to look at. But the answer is yes, you can buy. You can buy. So I want to encourage you in that. Just put together the game plan. Talk to professionals who can help you put those details together so that it doesn't become this pie in the sky dream that you'll never attain. Instead, it becomes a very functional and personal plan to take you from where you are to ultimately where you want to be. So that's what I would say when it comes to the mindset. You're going to help your mindset and believe you can buy when you have some tangible evidence in front of you. And that tangible evidence is going to be that plan that you put together with a loan officer, real estate agent, and your team in order to see that through. And you're going to have to, if you have a family, meet with the family, talk about the goal and why you want to achieve it. Put it up on the wall or on your mirror and encourage yourself in the fact that you want to buy a home and you're on the right track to buy. And so encourage yourself in that it's possible. Okay. If you need more specific answers to your particular situation, like you really want to look at your income, let's look at, maybe your taxes, let's look at your credit report. That's what Homeowner Prep is all about. So, we can help you in that. I would encourage you that if you are in that space where, you're trying to figure out how, then you need to have some professionals in your corner. You're not going to figure it out on your own. It's a group project. But, you'll find the value, the support, the community within Homeowner Prep. We have different resources, events, programs that we can offer to you. I know, for instance, our Future Homeowner Academy is literally an online community of aspiring first-time home buyers. And we do limit that community because we want people who are in process and doing the work, but there's an opportunity there. So I know, right now our wait list is open on our website. So if you visit futurehomeowneracademy.com, you can sign up for the wait list and then you can, be admitted into the community when that slot opens. But we're really trying to not only build that community, but protect that community because we need folks to be open, transparent, folks who have particular needs, particular questions that they might be more comfortable asking our community than they are talking to their own family about. And so we want to be protective of that academy. So if you have any questions about that, definitely don't hesitate to reach out. But I hope that you found this episode helpful. I don't want this to be very long. I want you to share it with somebody who may be looking to buy their first home. Maybe they're wondering if they should build their first home. They're reading some of these headlines that are out there. If they haven't heard about this Wells Fargo program, these are great opportunities for people. Feel free to share it with them. Help somebody else as you're helping yourself. Build a group, maybe an accountability group. If you know somebody who's on the same process, the same journey as you are, hold each other accountable to achieving this goal. It's a worthwhile goal, and you need somebody in your corner to make it happen. So at the end of the day, this show is all about helping you. If you want more real conversations about buying your first home, building generational wealth, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And until the next episode, be blessed.
The Future Homeowner Show. Yeah, we taught that first key glow. Let's go, let's go. Yeah, savings on the table, dreams in the frame. First time buyer, we know your name. Credit down payment, what's in the plan? We make it clear so you understand. Take a breath, we got you, one step at a time. No pressure, just truth. Now lean in, hear the voice. Your home starts here with the right choice. The Future Homeowner Show, we break it down. Yeah. The Future Homeowner Show, from start to close. Ooh.